Good morning, YouTube family, and welcome to another time with Blanche Clayton. I promised you that I was here to support you, and I'm going to do that to the best of my ability and knowledge. I would like to begin, this session by stating what it's about. We will be deconstructing who's raising America's children, the question that I last posed with you, that all of us need to buy in. There's not a human being on the face of this earth that should not be asking themselves that question, and in particular, here in the United States. I was looking at, some data just yesterday that said kids' death by gunfire in the United States. And it says today we have more preschoolers dying of gunfire than we have police officers. That should strike your heart like it did mine. Just seeing where we are, that we have not made ourselves, meaning the human family, our number one priority. Before we begin the conversation, I want to preface it by saying this is not a one-shot deal or one-time, presentation. It took some time for us to get to where we are in society and as a people. It took time for us to get here. And it's going to take some time for us to deconstruct what happened. We have a serious issue here because at some point in time in the early 1960s, some decisions was being made that impacts our lives today that many of you may or may not be aware of. And many of you had a direct hand in constructing these questions. What we are facing with today, and I'm going to get to the gut, of it before we begin moving, any further or delving into it. At some point in America, we decided, parents, that we were no longer going to parent children. We had more important things to do. We made that decision. Mothers made that decision when the play was, we need our rights, and which there's nothing wrong with rights. As I mentioned to you, if it had not been for me being able to have a job, I would not have been able to have raised my children when my marriage dissolved. So yes, I'm not opposed to us having rights. What I am opposed to, us not raising our children. Somehow we have not factored that in. We have not factored that in. We have not put children as our most highest priority when children are in crisis. And it's up to us to reach back and get the ball and run with it. And that's what I'm here to do, to help you, to help us pick up the ball and get going again. Let me begin this conversation by sharing with you my thoughts and approach to this vital conversation that we must have at this time. In this country, we have omitted our spirituality. That has not been our emphasis. And that has been our biggest destruction. In 1956, Dr. Martin Luther King gave a message to the Christian church in America where he spoke very eloquently, pointing out to America where it was at that time and what adjustments needed to be made. In his message to the United States, which is us, I hadn't even graduated high school at that time, so I was unaware of the conversation. But this is what he said to America at that time. He said, America, you have outdistanced your spirituality and your morality. You have excelled in material goods and in scientific advancements. Oh, and that's why we're suffering today. We left our morals, like you said, at that time in America, 1956, that America was in that place. And we went overboard in the 1980s, in which we will get to that in another conversation at another time. I'm going to give all my 100 to see that not one stone is left unturned for us to see where we dropped the ball and what a bad decision that was, that we made rather, in deciding we were no longer going to parent children, that we would outsource children, and you heard me mention that. But let me back up and elaborate a little further on what Dr. King said, that America had allowed its material advancements and its scientific advancements to outdistance its spirituality. I want to speak to that just a little bit. The coronavirus. What has the coronavirus put in our lap? We are faced with this radical crisis. Our way of being in the world doesn't work anymore. We see it every day in the streets where people, we want to go to the beach. We want to gather in the parks. We want to dine in restaurants, as if this is not even happening. Oh, we faced with it. Many of us who are wise and who are awake, we see what time it is. I don't think it was happenstance that the entire planet was put on pause. No man can construct something like that, of this magnitude. To stop the planet? Your busy schedule got interrupted. Families were sent home. When you have told yourself and you bought into the idea that everything you did was for the family, but was it for the family? Did you have the time to spend with the family? Did you even know your family? Coronavirus helped you to reevaluate your course, to reevaluate how you thought and see things. Oh, it afforded all of us that opportunity. We are at a place where what we have once done doesn't work anymore. We are at a place where how we interact with one another doesn't work anymore. And I say this because I'm sitting here on YouTube. That's something that I thought that I would never do. I had no idea that I would be doing this, interacting. I envisioned myself face to face, eyeball to eyeball, with an audience of people that we exchanging some much needed dialogue, some much impartation of information to help us correct our course. I thought that would be person to person. But here I am talking to you through technology. And it's a challenge for me. But because the cause is worth it. I'm stuttering and stammering in my speech. And hey, it is what it is. I'm not used to talking to a screen. I'm used to talking to people. And I said that to help you to see, yes, our interaction has changed because of this. And we are faced with change. I had a decision that I had to make. And many of you have some decisions as well, in which we're going to talk about that. I had to make the decision. Am I going to hold to the old way of doing because I'm comfortable speaking in front of people, real people? This is uncomfortable. I'm learning a skill. It's just that real. I had a choice to make. Either you have something to say, either you have something to give. It's not going to be the way that you always had it. It's not going to be comfortable. We all are uncomfortable right now. We all are faced and our survival is threatened because of the insurmountable problems that we are facing today. Some of you, due to the coronavirus, you learn things about your children that you never knew. You learn things about yourself that you didn't know. You also learned that you didn't have the skills that you needed. What does this say to us? We are faced with it, but what does it say to us? What is our response to this radical crisis that's threatening all of us, that's threatening humanity, that threatens our survival? This is our challenge now for us as human beings to decide whether we're going to change or whether we're going to die. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. The ball is in our court. It's what we do with it. It's what we do with it. We're all in the valley of decisions now where we're having to decide what we're going to do. And deciding what we're going to do with children is one of those decisions that we have to make. I turn to now, who is raising America's children? What we do know is that we have over 4.5 decades of children who have never been parented by their biological parents. Fact. This didn't just happen. As I mentioned, it didn't just happen. A decision was made. A decision in the past that has dictated our current predicament. Where parents are with children today is based on some decisions that was made in the past that impacted our future, whether we were knowledgeable of it or not. Parents raised their own children. That was not left up to daycare centers or our public school system or our recreation department. Anything that parents have come up with as substitutes for what it is that's your job. And the pandemic has put you square one back in that position. And what are you going to do this time? Will you make the same decision that it's up to other entities to do what you have been called to do? The one who called you is also capable of equipping you for the job. So we are without excuse. A decision is put before you. What has coronavirus given to us in reality? What has it given to us? It's given us the opportunity to get it right. We have the opportunity right now to get it right, to correct our wrongs. And we made some wrongs coming out of the 60s. We were preoccupied with careers, jobs, housing, money. And let's just say, yes, money. But we got to look now. We got to take another look. Because what we once did does no longer work. Let me put another card on the table for you. In working with the juvenile courts and their parent group, I put together a poster that I entitled "Monsters Are Loose in the Streets and There's Nowhere to Hide." I referenced that in comparison to my upbringing when children was raised in a village that had walls, and the walls were the people. The people had character. They had sound values. Children respected authority figures, all kind. It didn't matter whether it was your mama or your daddy, whoever it was. Any adult in the village, because what? We had commonly shared values that was of worth and that was sound, that protected the spirit of the child. They wasn't exposed to what children are exposed to today. We made a transition. I called attention to that group, the monsters that's loose in the streets, to create the environment that now children are being raised in, to create the awareness of what children are being raised in, what type of village this is. We went from one form of tradition in which, I so applaud moving from some tradition, because a lot of it just plain sucked. I wasn't for it either, and I made some changes. But the village that we're living in now that doesn't have walls, it's your thing. Do what you want to do. Nobody can tell me what to do. It's what I want. Oh, let's talk about this wall. Let's talk about these invisible walls. The monsters that's loose in the street. Let's pick them off. The hot topic now is police brutality, racism, immigration. What we haven't talked about, parenting, fatherlessness, terrorism, unruly children, drug abuse, drug trafficking, failing schools, in which we're going to get into that. Why they failing? I have to just give you this one. I can't go by. I can't pass this one. Schools are failing because what? Families fail. And when families fail, they shifted that responsibility over to the schools to do what you were supposed to be doing. Schools lost their mission. They couldn't focus on educating and developing the child because the child came to school with multiple social issues that caused them to derail. They had to do all of those things to stretch beyond their capacity. Time wasn't given to what? Just teaching alone. Because children came to school hungry. Children came to school not being clothed. Oh, this is the walls that we created. Oh, yeah, we had other things to do than parent our children. And we're paying for it because what? Children are us. As I said, they're us. And if humanity is not the number one priority, what is? And we know what became the priority. But as I also said, we're in a place now to get it right. Because what we have been doing doesn't work anymore. We have nowhere else to go. There's no place to hide. This thing is out there wide open, butt naked for all of us to see. We didn't need anybody to tell us when the pandemic hit and everybody had to go home. Nobody needed to teach anybody anything about what was going on because we all saw the handwriting on the wall for ourselves. Now, I ask you this question. I've watched your videos. I've seen the meltdown. I've felt the groan and agony of parents as you were awakening to some hard truth that you had avoided. Every mother knows when she is not giving fully of what she can to her children because what? Of being torn with other priorities. And as I say, I get that. But we got to dig ourselves out of this hole. The groanings that I hear and feel when parents are saying, when this racism went belly up in this country because it was there the whole time. We just never dealt with it. But something outside of coronavirus said, okay, humanity, we're going to start over again because what you've been doing thus far does no longer work. And your existence is being threatened because of it. Oh, we should be thankful that we have a creator that saw us and stopped it for us to regroup. This is what I heard when I heard the groanings of parents. I thought this was over. I didn't think that I would have to teach my child about this. Anything that you don't face, it doesn't go away. If we don't change, these are some questions that you're going to have to prepare yourself. I understand. There's some talk in the land that schools are about to reopen. I beg you to use some wisdom. As I said, we all have to make some decision. What will you do different? It's not happenstance that you were reconnected with your child. It's not happenstance. Prepare yourself to answer these questions if you decide not to change or to make a decision. Number one, how will you prepare your child to deal with racism? You're struggling now with that because you didn't think that it was happen. How will you prepare your child to handle terrorism? How will you prepare your child to handle firearms? And you know, mass shooting is commonplace. So you're sending your children back to a house that's on fire. Have you prepared them for it? Have you prepared them for how to deal with gang violence? Have you decided how you're going to prepare them to handle bullying? Many of you, I wept when I saw that, have resorted to hiring lawyers, when at one time children handled that on their own without violence. But see, when you don't have time to instill the proper values, their self-esteem and self-worth diminish. What did you drive them to do? You stay on this soccer team, you stay on this football team, you stay on this basketball team so you can get a scholarship so you can go to the NBA. Woo, what happened to character? We see them falling like flies every day because of their humanity shows up and they don't know how to handle it because they haven't been prepared. You never thought that you would be challenged with children, confused about their sexuality. But back then, when some decision was being made that you and I knew nothing about, that now we are living it out, it was looked at. And we're going to look at some of those questions that they posed. And that was one of them. Would it make a difference when they were going through that stage in life that we all go through if they weren't guided properly? But that was shouldered to the schools. Daycares. As I said to you, those entities don't raise children. I know I have given you a lot this morning. I know. My heart is full. That's what led me to sit in front of you, because my heart is full to overflowing, where I had to have this conversation. I had to share with you what we are up against. The challenge that we have now as humanity: we change or we cease to exist. Are you prepared to teach your children more of the same that doesn't work, that got us where we are now? Or are you going to make a decision? You're going to rethink that thing. You can do with far less than what you told yourself. And coronavirus did that. One of the positives that I want to leave with you in closing this session: coronavirus gave us the opportunity to open the doors of new possibilities. And that's where we are going. We're going to entertain new possibilities because the old no longer serves who we are. Thank you and much love. Blanche Clay.